Hi there, welcome to our daily Moravian Bible study. We are fast approaching the end of the book of Acts. We are in Acts 27, verse 39 through to Acts 28, verse 6. It's the dramatic shipwreck of Paul onto the island of Malta, the third time that Paul has been shipwrecked on his missionary journey. And God spares Paul's life. God promises Paul through an angel that he will spare his life and the lives of all of the 276 people on this ship. Paul knew that God had a purpose for his life. God had clearly spoke to him. He will go to Rome, an audience with Caesar. And so Paul was confident that God would outwork that purpose, that mission on his life. Promise and purpose, so important. We'll come back to that in a moment. And when we read this story, this is an incredibly dangerous moment, isn't it? It's a moment where people could easily die. It's entirely possible in this moment that many people could lose their lives. They've been in this massive storm for 2 weeks, and it's been night time. They haven't eaten. They don't really know if they're close to land. They've been dropping down weights to work out the depth to see if they're getting closer to land. They believe they are. And as morning rises, they see ahead of them a glimpse of hope. And it's an island, an unidentified island that we know as Malta. Interestingly, in 2002, a team of biblical archaeologists decided to use this passage to do a scuba dive. They knew from the text that it described a bay with a beach. They knew it was a place where two seas met from the text. They knew they were 15 fathoms out to sea, and when they dived in that place, they found a first century Roman anchor that was confirmed by experts to be the type of anchor used by the Alexandrian ships described in this passage. I think that's quite interesting. So they swim to shore, and it says that the islanders, who literally translated are barbarians, they don't even speak the Greek language, they show unusual kindness to these strangers that are washed up on shore, undoubtedly because God's favour is on Paul, even though God in his wisdom has allowed Paul to be shipwrecked. So they light a fire to dry out these soaked, cold prisoners, soldiers, and travellers. And it says that as Paul's gathering firewood, in other words, Paul is just pulling his weight. Even though he has prophesied that they would be saved, even though it is clear that God's hand is on Paul's life and therefore all the other passengers, Paul is serving. And yet, in this roller coaster of acts, you've got shipwreck, dramatic rescue, and then you've got this safety and favour on land, and then he gets bit by a viper on the hand. It says they can all see it basically dangling off his hand with its fangs locked on. Now, the islanders take this to be a sign, and it was a sign. They assumed and interpreted it as a sign of justice that this prisoner clearly decided to die, and because he'd escaped death, somehow the gods were now punishing Paul. But of course, it was a sign. We know that from Mark 16:18, don't we? These signs will accompany those who believe. They will drink poison. It will not harm them, that sort of thing. And they will lay hands on the sick. So it was a sign that God was with Paul. And of course, Paul stays there 3 months in this God-ordained diversion. Perhaps even the earliest of churches was formed in Malta. And in our lives, from time to time, we face perhaps life-threatening situations and circumstances. We find ourselves in perhaps what we might call shipwrecked type of circumstances, washed upon the shore at the need for help from strangers. How do we navigate life in those times? Well, I think like Paul, we hold on to the promises of God. Paul was confident that God was with him because God had promised to always be with him. And we hold on to the purposes of God. Paul knew that Jesus had said to him, Paul, I want you in Rome. And so he was confident that God would outwork that purpose for his life. It reminded me of when we were 10 years old, my brother and I. My brother was in a near fatal road accident, nearly died. But our prayers were shaped and formed and filled with faith because we knew the prophetic promises that were on his life. It empowered us to pray and believe for breakthrough, and breakthrough came in his life. God spared his life. Paul used this as an opportunity to advance the gospel through serving. Even though he predicted all of this, even though God spared his life miraculously, he still got his hands dirty and picked up sticks to throw on the fire. And also through the miraculous, because it's true, isn't it, that it's often at times of greatest need and greatest lack. That's when we are most aligned for God's miraculous power to be displayed in our lives. So I don't know what God-ordained diversion you may be facing at the moment. Certainly COVID has been one of those for us. But as we push through that, let us pray with faith in the promises of God and the purpose of God. Have a great day.